They told you they were building AI to save humanity. They lied. Not in a small way, not in a forgivable way, in a way that affects every person on this planet. This is the story of the biggest lie in the history of technology. Sam Altman stood on that stage and said all the right things. He always does. But what the mission statement says and what the documents show are two completely different stories. It started as something real, a genuine attempt to do something that had never been done before. In 2015, 6 people sat in a room and made a promise. Build AI safely, share it with everyone, answer to no one but humanity. That promise lasted exactly 4 years. In 2019, they quietly created a for-profit structure. The mission statement stayed the same. The organization became something different. Every time you open ChatGPT, you are using a product built by a company that still calls itself a nonprofit. Think about that. The moment the money arrived, everything changed. $1 billion has a way of changing everything. The lawyers worked quietly through the night. By morning, the nonprofit had a for-profit subsidiary. Nobody announced it loudly. What is in those sealed documents? That is the question nobody in the mainstream media is asking. They held press conferences. They gave interviews. They talked about safety constantly. Meanwhile, the deployment decisions told a completely different story. They said safety first. Then they watched a competitor gain ground and rushed their product to market anyway. Safety first until second place. The safety researchers had a laboratory. It got smaller every quarter. The commercial team got bigger every quarter. The math is not complicated. One by one, they left. The people who actually believed in the mission. The people who joined because the promise was real. Someone wrote those words. Safety is no longer the priority. And then they walked out the door. Congress called them in, asked the hard question. $1 billion from Microsoft, then $10 billion, then $13 billion. At what point does a partner become a controller? The benchmarks they published were real. They just were not the complete picture. There is a difference between selected truth and the whole truth. Every bridge has a weight limit. This one is being tested. They knew what was being built. They deployed it anyway. The gap between knowing and telling is where the lie lives. The board fired the CEO, then rehired him 5 days later. What happened in those 5 days has never been fully explained. Some things you cannot say if you want to keep your job. Some things you cannot say even after you leave. Capped profit, nonprofit control, for-profit subsidiary. The structure is so complex that understanding it requires a lawyer. That complexity is not accidental. The research existed. The safety concerns were documented. The documentation was marked confidential. The product launched on schedule. It is not what a company says that reveals its true values. It is what it does when saying and doing conflict. Watching the money flow tells you more than any mission statement ever could. The gap between public statement and internal document is where the truth lives. Regulation requires disclosure. Disclosure requires honesty. Honesty requires that what you say publicly matches what you know internally. The journalists wrote what they were briefed. The briefings were carefully prepared. The preparation served one purpose. The same week they filed documents describing themselves as safety-focused, they shipped a product their own red team had flagged. The researchers found problems. They wrote the problems down. The problems were classified internal only. The product launched. The journalists asked questions. The answers were technically true.
technically true is not the same as honest.
Trust is finite. Spend it faster than you earn it, and eventually it runs out. The investors applauded. Their financial interests and the mission narrative aligned perfectly. For now. The board resolution raises more questions than it answers. That is not an accident either. The servers run continuously. The data flows in. The commercial engine grows. The nonprofit mission statement remains on the website. They published the risk paper, then accelerated the deployment of the risky system. Both things are true simultaneously. Open. The word is right there in the name. The patents tell a different story. The attorneys understand what this restructuring means. Understanding it requires expertise most people do not have. That is by design. The public timeline and the internal timeline have been diverging since 2019. The gap is now significant. One building, one organization, one set of decisions that will affect 8 billion people. No meaningful external oversight. No independent verification of safety claims. The child trusts the system completely. The parent reads the terms of service and understands something the child does not yet.
Accountability requires teeth. The structure was designed to have none. The scientists in that room know what is actually being built. The gap between what they know and what the public knows is the most dangerous gap in human history. You agreed to the terms. You just did not read them. They were written that way deliberately. The lights burn all night in that building. The decisions being made inside will affect your life in ways you cannot yet imagine. The difference between what the model card says and what independent researchers find is not a small difference. Small lies become large ones when they compound. The structure is showing stress fractures. The sun rises on a company that still claims to be working for your benefit. The mission statement is still on the website. The question is whether you still believe it. If nobody else is going to tell you the truth about OpenAI, we will. Subscribe to Dark Files AI. Subscribe because the truth matters, and we are not stopping. Period.